The great hall of the Galactic Council buzzed with the familiar sounds of another routine meeting. Representatives from dozens of alien species filled the massive chamber, their voices creating a symphony of clicks, whistles, and electronic tones that the universal translators worked hard to convert into understandable speech. At the center of the hall, Elder Counselor Zixthera stood tall on her crystal platform. Her body was made of living diamond, each facet catching the light and throwing rainbows across the chamber walls. The Zephyrians had ruled this part of the galaxy for over 2,000 years, and Zixthera wore that authority like a crown. Her crystalline voice rang clear as she called the session to order. "Today we address the expansion requests from the Outer Rim territories," she announced. The translator made her voice sound cold and sharp like breaking glass. The hive clusters seek permission to establish 3 new colonies in the neutral zone. The insectoid representatives stirred in their section of the hall. Their chittering filled the air as they communicated among themselves through rapid antenna movements. Queen Speaker Vexhai rose from her delegation, her 6 legs clicking against the metal floor. Her compound eyes reflected the chamber lights like tiny mirrors. "The hive requires these worlds for our expanding population," Vexhai declared. "Our scouts have confirmed these planets contain no intelligent life, only primitive creatures that barely qualify as sentient." From the shadowy corner of the chamber, a void walker drifted forward. The ethereal being's translucent form shimmered like heat waves rising from hot pavement. When it spoke, its voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "The void walkers have no objection to hive expansion," the being said. "These empty worlds serve no purpose to our kind. We concern ourselves with deeper mysteries of the universe." The discussion continued in the same predictable pattern. The 3 major powers, Zephyrians, hive clusters, and void walkers, dominated the conversation while smaller species sat quietly in their assigned sections. This was how it had always been. The strong decided and the weak followed. Then something unexpected happened. A new voice spoke up from the far corner of the chamber. "What about the old star charts? The ones that mention other intelligent species in that region?" All eyes turned toward the speaker. Ambassador Grixtar of the Saurek delegation stood nervously on his hind legs. His reptilian scales were a dull green color that darkened when he was anxious, and right now they were almost black. The Saurek had only joined the council 6 months ago, and this was the first time their representative had spoken during a major session. Elder Counselor Zixthera's crystalline form seemed to grow brighter, a sure sign of her irritation. "Ambassador Grixtar, you are new to this council. Perhaps you should familiarize yourself with proper procedures before interrupting important discussions." Grixtar's scales darkened further, but he pressed on. "I mean no disrespect, Elder Counselor, but our archaeologists have been studying the ancient navigation records from that sector. There are repeated references to a species called humans, from a system called Sol." The effect was immediate and dramatic. Laughter erupted throughout the chamber. The Zephyrians' crystal voices created a sound like wind chimes in a hurricane. The hive cluster's chittering became so rapid it sounded like static. Even some of the smaller species joined in with their own versions of amusement. Elder Counselor Zixthera raised one crystal hand for silence. "My dear Ambassador," she said, her voice dripping with condescension, "you have discovered what we call the human myth. Every new species that joins our council eventually stumbles across these old stories." Queen Speaker Vexhai's compound eyes fixed on the young Saurek. "The hive has studied these legends for over 800 years. Humans are a cautionary tale, nothing more. A story told by primitive civilizations to explain the dangers of reckless space exploration." The Void Walker drifted closer to Grixtar, its form pulsing with what might have been amusement. "Our philosophers have long debated the human stories. We believe they represent early attempts to understand the unknown, a myth created to give form to the fears that all species feel when they first leave their homeworlds." Elder Counselor Zixthera nodded approvingly. "Precisely. Think about it logically, Ambassador. These so-called humans were supposedly bipedal creatures much like yourself. The stories claim they possessed remarkable adaptability and an inexplicable drive to explore the most dangerous regions of space. More." Laughter rippled through the chamber. "The tales become more ridiculous with each telling," Zixthera continued. "They supposedly developed interstellar travel using primitive chemical propulsion." "Chemical propulsion?" "As if any intelligent species would attempt to cross the void using such crude technology." Queen Speaker Vex High clicked her mandibles in agreement. The Hive's scientists have analyzed the supposed location of this Sol system. The radiation storms in that region would sterilize any biological life form. No species could survive there, let alone develop advanced civilization. And yet, the Voidwalker added, its voice taking on a dreamy quality, the stories persist. Humans who could adapt to any environment. Humans who treated the vacuum of space like an ocean to be explored. Humans who built cities on worlds that should have killed them. Fantasy, Elder Counselor Zixthera declared firmly. Pure fantasy, designed to inspire young species to take foolish risks. How many promising civilizations have we lost because they believed these stories and attempted to explore regions beyond their capabilities? Ambassador Grixtar looked around the chamber, his scales shifting from black to dark brown. But the star charts are very detailed. They include specific coordinates, stellar classifications, even notes about planetary conditions. Elaborate fiction, Zixthera replied. The ancients who created these myths were quite thorough. They wanted their cautionary tales to seem believable. The Voidwalker pulsed again. Consider the logical impossibilities, young ambassador. The stories claim humans could survive in environments that would kill Zephyrians, hive clusters, and Voidwalkers alike. They supposedly built ships without the benefit of crystal matrix technology, or biomechanical engineering or void manipulation. Most absurd of all, they allegedly spread across thousands of light years using nothing but determination and primitive fusion drives. The physics alone make it impossible, Queen Speaker Vex High added. Our scientists have calculated that chemical and early fusion propulsion could never generate sufficient velocity for practical interstellar travel. A journey to the nearest star would take thousands of years. Elder Counselor Zixthera gestured toward the chamber's main display, which showed a map of known galactic civilization. As you can see, Ambassador, intelligent life exists in a relatively small region of our galaxy. The civilized worlds cluster together because we understand the limitations of physics and biology. We expand carefully, methodically within the bounds of possibility. The empty regions you see on this map are empty for good reason, the Voidwalker explained. They are too dangerous, too hostile, too remote for intelligent life to flourish. If these mythical humans had ever existed, we would have encountered them by now. Queen Speaker Vex High's antennae twitched with amusement. Unless you believe they learned to hide from our sensors while flying around in chemical rockets. The chamber erupted in fresh laughter. Ambassador, Grixtar's scales had returned to their normal green color, but he still looked confused. Then how do you explain the consistency of the stories across so many different cultures? Even species that never contacted each other tell similar human myths. Simple, Elder Counselor Zixthera replied. Fear is universal. When young species first encounter the vastness of space, they create similar myths to explain what they don't understand. The human stories represent every species' secret dream of unlimited exploration, combined with their worst nightmare of what might be waiting in the dark. It's quite natural, the Voidwalker added. Every civilization goes through this phase. You'll find that as the Sarek mature as a spacefaring people, you'll outgrow these primitive beliefs. Elder Counselor Zixthera made a note on her crystal datapad. I hereby formally classify all human references found in Sarek archaeological records as Class 7 historical fiction. This will prevent future confusion. Now then, Queen Speaker Vex High said, her compound eyes gleaming. Can we return to important matters? The Hive's expansion schedule cannot wait for discussions of mythical beings. The session continued as if nothing had happened. The three major powers divided up the neutral zone among themselves while smaller species watched in silence. Ambassador Grixtar sat down heavily, his scales a confused mixture of colors. None of them noticed the faint energy signature that briefly appeared on their long-range sensors, so far out that it barely registered above background radiation. The automatic systems logged it as cosmic debris and dismissed it without alerting anyone. In the deep black of space, something was approaching. Something that had been watching and listening, and learning about the species that thought they ruled the galaxy. But the council was too busy congratulating themselves on their wisdom to pay attention to censor ghosts and ancient myths. After all, everyone knew that humans were just legends. 3 weeks after the council session, Admiral Kethmore was enjoying his morning meditation. When the alarm started screaming, the Zephyrian officer's crystal body immediately shifted from peaceful blue to alert orange as he absorbed the emergency frequencies flooding his flagship's communication systems. His meditation chamber, usually a place of calm reflection, now blazed with warning lights that cast sharp shadows across the walls. "Report," he commanded, his crystalline voice cutting through the chaos. Sub-Commander Jilthek materialized in the doorway, her smaller crystal form flickering with nervous energy. "Admiral, long-range sensors have detected an anomaly at the edge of Confederation space. Unknown vessel approaching at impossible velocity." Admiral Kethmore rose from his meditation platform, his body shifting to a deep red that indicated battle readiness. "Impossible velocity?" "Explain." "Sir, the object is traveling at 0.75 light speed without using any propulsion system we can identify. Our physics department says it shouldn't be possible." The Admiral strode onto the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Radiance. The massive Zephyrian dreadnought was one of the most powerful ships in the Confederation fleet, its crystal hull capable of channeling stellar energy into devastating weapon beams. Around him, his crew worked frantically at stations that looked like sculptures made of living light. "Display the sensor readings," Kethmore ordered. The main hologram flickered to life, showing a three-dimensional map of local space. At the very edge of sensor range, a red dot moved steadily toward Confederation territory. Numbers scrolled alongside it, showing velocity, trajectory, and mass readings that made several crew members whistle in disbelief. "By the core," whispered Navigator Zexelin, "that thing is huge. Mass readings suggest something at least 50 times larger than our biggest cargo haulers." Admiral Kethmore studied the display with growing concern. "Hull composition?" "Unknown, sir." "The spectral analysis is confusing. It appears to be constructed from refined metals and composite materials that don't match anything in our databases." Sub-Commander Jilthek highlighted sections of the data stream. "Admiral, these material readings are impossible. Our metallurgists say some of these alloys could only be created in the heart of a dying star. The energy requirements alone would bankrupt most planetary civilizations. And yet there it is," the Admiral said grimly. "Time to intercept?" 14 hours at current velocity, sir." Admiral Kethmore made his decision quickly. "Signal the escort squadron. We intercept this object before it reaches inhabited space. If it's hostile, we'll deal with it. If it's not—" He paused, his crystal form darkening with uncertainty. "Well, we'll find out what we're dealing with." 12 hours later, the Eternal Radiance and her 5 escort ships dropped out of hyperspace at the intercept coordinates. What they found waiting for them defied every assumption they'd made about starship design. The unknown vessel was enormous. It stretched for over 3 kilometers from bow to stern, its hull gleaming with a metallic finish that seemed to absorb and reflect light in impossible ways. Strange protrusions dotted its surface, some obviously weapons, others completely mysterious. Most unsettling of all, it showed no signs of the crystal matrix energy cores that powered every known starship. Instead, it seemed to run on some form of contained fusion that burned brighter than a small sun. "Admiral," Communications Officer Fexstar reported, her voice tight with nervousness. "The vessel is hailing us." On screen, the main hologram shifted to show the interior of what was obviously a command deck. But instead of the familiar sight of crystalline Zephyrians, insectoid hive clusters or ethereal voidwalkers, the image showed something that made the bridge crew gasp in shock. A bipedal creature sat in what appeared to be a command chair. Its body was covered in some sort of artificial skin, and its head was topped with brown fiber that moved as if alive. 2 forward-facing eyes regarded them with calm intelligence. When it spoke, the voice was unlike anything in their translation databases, organic, warm, and utterly alien. "Greetings. I am Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earthship New Horizon, representing the United Earth Expedition Force. You have entered our established flight path. Please identify yourselves and state your intentions." Admiral Kethmore felt his crystal body flicker between orange and red as conflicting emotions coursed through him. The translator was working, but the language patterns it was processing matched nothing in Confederation records. "Nothing except—" "This is Admiral Kethmore of the Confederation Defense Fleet," he replied carefully. "We are investigating an unidentified vessel in our territory." "You claim to represent Earth?" The creature called Captain Chen nodded, a gesture the translator interpreted as affirmation. "That's correct, Admiral. Earth, 3rd planet of the Sol system. We're currently en route to establish a research station in the Kepler 442 system. Our navigation charts show this region as unclaimed space. Sub-Commander Jilthek leaned close to the Admiral's audio pickup. Sir, the translators are having difficulty with her language, but the linguistic patterns match the theoretical reconstructions from the human myth databases. Admiral Kethmore felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ship's temperature controls. Captain Chen, forgive my directness, but our records indicate that humans are mythological, a species that exists only in ancient legends. Captain Chen smiled, an expression that the translator struggled to interpret. I can understand your confusion, Admiral. We've been aware of your Confederation for some time, but we haven't felt the need to make formal contact until now. Aware of us? For how long? Approximately 57 of your standard years. We've been monitoring your communications and expansion patterns from our observation posts in this region. The bridge of the eternal radiance fell silent except for the humming of crystal processors working overtime to make sense of what they were. Hearing, Admiral Kethmore struggled to maintain his composure. Captain, with respect, our surveys show no observation posts in this region. Our sensors would have detected any installations, would they? Captain Chen's expression became what the translator identified as amused. Admiral, may I ask what your sensors are designed to detect? Crystal matrix energy signatures, biomechanical field generators, void manipulation distortions, standard subspace communications, all technologies used by Confederation species. Chen interrupted gently. Your sensors are very good at finding what you expect to find. They're less effective at detecting technologies you've never encountered. Sub-Commander Jilthek pulled up a tactical display of the surrounding space. Admiral, I'm running deep scans now. Something's wrong. I'm detecting faint energy signatures that weren't there before. Or maybe they were, but our computers dismissed them as background radiation. Admiral Kethmore's crystal form pulsed with growing alarm. How many signatures? 17, sir. All around us. They've been there the whole time, but they're using power sources our sensors aren't programmed to recognize. Captain Chen watched the exchange with patient interest. Your sub-commander is very observant, Admiral. Those are our early warning stations. They've been tracking your approach for the past 6 hours. Early warning stations, the Admiral repeated slowly. You've been watching us approach, of course. When unknown military vessels enter our operational area, we take appropriate precautions. The implications hit Admiral Kethmore like a physical blow. This single human ship had been aware of their presence long before they detected it. There were 17 hidden installations in a region they thought was empty. And this Captain Chen was speaking as if the Confederation fleet was the intruder. Captain, he said carefully, your ship is not impressive, but surely you understand that 5 Confederation warships represent considerable firepower. Are you not concerned about the tactical situation? Captain Chen's smile became what the translator interpreted as genuinely warm. Admiral, the New Horizon is a civilian vessel. A colony ship, actually. We're carrying 12,000 settlers and their equipment to establish a new research colony. A civilian vessel, Admiral Kethmore repeated. That's correct. Our defensive capabilities are limited to standard point defense systems and basic tactical maneuvering. Sub-Commander Jilthek was studying her tactical displays with growing confusion. Admiral, I'm reading weapon signatures from that ship that I don't understand. The energy patterns suggest firepower that exceeds our entire squadron combined. Standard point defense, Captain Chen said cheerfully, apparently monitoring their communications. Nothing too elaborate. Admiral Kethmore felt reality shifting around him like sand. Captain Chen, may I ask, if this is a civilian vessel with basic defenses, what would a human military ship look like? The warmth faded slightly from Captain Chen's expression. Admiral, I hope that question remains theoretical. Earth's defensive fleets are somewhat more robust than what you see here. Defensive fleets, plural. Oh yes. Earth maintains several defensive fleets plus our exploration and colonization forces. The New Horizon is part of the latter category. Navigator Zexelin looked up from her station, her crystal form flickering with disbelief. Admiral, if this is just a colony ship, and they have multiple fleets. Admiral Kethmore didn't finish the thought. He was beginning to understand that everything the Confederation thought, the emergency session of the Galactic Council convened just 18 hours after Admiral Kethmore's first contact report reached the capital world. The great chamber buzzed with nervous energy as representatives from every major species gathered to witness something unprecedented. First contact with a species they had dismissed as myth. Elder Counselor Zixthera stood at her crystal platform, but her usual commanding presence seemed diminished. Her crystalline form flickered between colors as she struggled to process the implications of the Admiral's report. Around the chamber, other representatives showed similar signs of distress. Even the normally ethereal voidwalkers seemed more solid, as if shock had made them forget to maintain their translucent state. The Council recognizes Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earth Expedition Force, Zixthera announced, her voice lacking its usual authority. The main holographic display activated, showing the bridge of the human vessel. Captain Chen appeared exactly as Admiral Kethmore had described, bipedal covered in artificial skin, with those unsettling forward-facing eyes that seemed to see everything. But what struck the council members most was her calm demeanor. She sat relaxed in her command chair, as if addressing a galactic government was something she did every day. "Thank you, Elder Counselor," Chen said, her organic voice carrying easily through the translation systems. "I appreciate the opportunity to address your council." Queen Speaker Vexhai leaned forward in her section, her compound eyes reflecting the hologram's light. "Captain Chen, you claim to represent a species we know only from ancient stories. Surely you understand our skepticism." "I do understand," Chen replied. "From your perspective, we must seem impossible. But I assure you we're quite real." The Voidwalker representative drifted closer to the display, its form pulsing with curiosity. "You speak of your people as if you've been spacefaring for a significant time. Yet our records show no evidence of human civilization." Captain Chen smiled, that strange expression that the translators still struggled to interpret. "We've been exploring space for over 400 years. As for evidence, well, we've preferred to observe rather than interfere." "Observe," Elder Counselor Zixthera repeated, her crystalline voice sharp with suspicion. "Admiral Kethmore mentioned observation posts. How long have you been watching us?" "Long enough to understand your capabilities and intentions," Chen replied diplomatically. "We found it wise to study new civilizations before making contact." Ambassador Grixitar, the young Saurek who had first mentioned the human legends, spoke up from his corner. "The star charts my people found, they were real?" "Very real, Ambassador. Your archaeologist did excellent work. Those charts date back to our early exploration period, when we were still learning to hide our presence from species that might not be ready for contact." Queen Speaker Vexhai's mandibles clicked with agitation. "Not ready? You speak as if you were evaluating us. In a sense, we were. First contact can be traumatic for established civilizations. We wanted to ensure that any interaction would be beneficial for all parties." Elder Counselor Zixthera's form blazed with indignation. "Captain Chen, perhaps you misunderstand the situation. The Confederation represents the most advanced civilizations in this galaxy. We have technology that has kept peace and order for thousands of years." "I'm sure you do," Chen said mildly, "and it's quite impressive within certain parameters." The phrase "within certain parameters" hung in the air like a challenge. Vexhai rose to her full height, her 6 legs clicking against the floor. "Captain, your ship may be large, but surely you realize that you're outnumbered. Admiral Kethmore commands some of our finest vessels." "The Admiral's ships are indeed impressive," Chen agreed. "Crystal matrix technology is particularly elegant." "Then you acknowledge our superior position," Zixthera said, some of her confidence returning. Captain Chen's expression became what the translator identified as amused. "Elder Counselor, I think there's been a misunderstanding. You seem to believe this is some sort of confrontation, isn't it? An unknown species appears in our space with advanced technology, claims to have been watching us for decades, and expects us to simply accept their presence." "I expect nothing beyond common courtesy," Chen replied. "But if you're concerned about our capabilities, I'd be happy to provide a demonstration." The chamber fell silent. The word demonstration could mean many things, and none of them seemed comforting. Elder Counselor Zixthara exchanged glances with the other major representatives. "What sort of demonstration?" "A simple exercise to show you what human technology can do. Nothing threatening, of course. Just enough to establish our credentials." Queen Speaker Vexhai's compound eyes glittered. "Very well, but understand that Admiral Kethmore's squadron represents considerable firepower. If this is some elaborate deception, it's not, Chen said simply. Admiral, are you monitoring this conversation? Admiral Kethmore's voice came through the communication system. Yes, Captain. My ships are at full readiness. Excellent. With the Council's permission, I'll launch a few shuttles to demonstrate basic human defensive capabilities. Shuttles? Zixthara asked. Against military vessels? It's perfectly safe, Chen assured them. Our shuttles are equipped with standard training protocols. No weapons will be fired. Elder Counselor Zixthara looked around the chamber, reading the expressions of her fellow representatives. Curiosity was beginning to overcome caution. Very well, but Admiral Kethmore will maintain his defensive posture. Of course, Admiral, whenever you're ready. The tactical display in the council chamber shifted to show Admiral Kethmore's squadron in space. The 5 Confederation warships hung in formation around the massive human vessel, their crystal hulls gleaming with stored energy. They looked magnificent, the pinnacle of Confederation military technology. Then the shuttles launched. What emerged from the human ship defied every assumption about spacecraft design. The vehicles were sleek and angular, moving with a fluid grace that made the Confederation ships look clumsy by comparison. But more unsettling was how they seemed to change shape as they moved, configurations shifting like living things adapting to their environment. Remarkable, whispered the Void Walker. They appear to be using some form of programmable matter. Admiral Kethmore's voice crackled through the communication system. Council, these shuttles are demonstrating capabilities I've never seen. They're shifting between atmospheric and space configurations in real time. On the display, the human shuttles began a complex dance around the Confederation ships. They moved like water flowing around rocks, anticipating every defensive measure before it was deployed. When Admiral Kethmore's ships powered up their targeting systems, the shuttles had already moved to positions where they couldn't be locked onto. When the Confederation vessels tried to box them in, the shuttles simply flowed through gaps that seemed too small to exist. How are they doing that? Sub-Commander Jilthek's voice was tight with disbelief. Our sensors can barely track them. They're jamming our targeting computers without using any energy signatures we recognize. Queen Speaker Vex High leaned forward in her chair. Captain Chen, these are shuttles? Not dedicated fighter craft. Standard utility shuttles, Chen confirmed. Normally used for cargo transport and personnel movement. Each one can reconfigure itself for different mission requirements. Reconfigure how? Adaptive hull technology. The shuttle's computers analyze the tactical situation and optimize their shape and capabilities accordingly. It's quite basic, really. Elder Counselor Zixthara watched as one of the shuttles suddenly split into 3 smaller craft, each one taking a different vector around Admiral Kethmore's flagship. Basic? Well, basic for us. I understand it might seem complex to species that use fixed hull designs. The demonstration continued for 20 minutes. The human shuttles displayed capabilities that rendered every Confederation defensive system obsolete. They moved faster than anything that size should be able to move. They appeared in multiple places simultaneously through some sort of holographic projection system. Most disturbing of all, they seemed to anticipate every countermeasure before it was deployed. Finally, Admiral Kethmore's voice came through the speakers, tinged with something that might have been awe. Council, I must report that my squadron has been completely outmaneuvered. These shuttles have demonstrated they could disable our ships at will. Could they? Elder Counselor Zixthara asked. Without question, their targeting systems have locked onto our critical systems multiple times. If they had been armed for combat rather than demonstration, my entire squadron would be destroyed. The shuttles smoothly returned to their mothership, their forms shifting back to what was apparently their storage configuration. Captain Chen watched the council's reactions with patient interest. I trust that was educational, she said. The chamber was silent except for the humming of translation. Computers working overtime, Elder. Counselor Zixthara finally found her voice. Captain Chen, those were truly just shuttles? Transport shuttles, yes. Nothing military about them. Then what would human military craft be capable of? Captain Chen's expression became more serious. Elder Counselor, I hope that... The council chamber had never been so quiet. For 3 hours after the shuttle demonstration, representatives sat in stunned silence while their scientific advisors ran analysis after analysis of what they had witnessed. The readings made no sense. The tactical implications were terrifying. And through it all, Captain Chen waited patiently on the main display, occasionally sipping something from a small container. Elder Counselor Zixathera finally broke the silence. Captain Chen, I believe we need to discuss the larger picture. Your demonstration has raised questions about the scope of human activities in our galaxy. I thought it might, Chen replied. Would you like me to provide some context? Please. Captain Chen stood from her command chair and walked to what appeared to be a holographic display area on her bridge. With a gesture, she activated a three-dimensional map that made the council representatives lean forward in their seats. This is our current understanding of this region of the galaxy, Chen began. The map showed thousands of star systems with different colored markers indicating various types of activity. The blue markers represent Confederation space as we understand it. The blue markers covered exactly the same territory the Council believed they controlled. But what made several representatives gasp was everything else on the map. The green markers represent established human colonies, Chen continued. Yellow markers are research stations. Red markers indicate defensive installations. Purple markers show ongoing exploration missions. The map was covered with non-blue markers. They surrounded Confederation space like a vast net, extending far beyond the regions the Council had ever explored. There were human colonies in systems they thought were uninhabitable, research stations and nebulae they considered too dangerous to approach, and defensive installations in strategic locations that the Confederation's military planners would have killed for. Queen Speaker Vexhai rose from her chair, her compound eyes reflecting the holographic display. This can't be accurate. Our surveys show most of those systems are empty. Your surveys are based on your technological assumptions, Chen explained gently. You look for crystal matrix signatures, biomechanical energy patterns, and void manipulation distortions. Our technology operates on different principles. The Voidwalker representative drifted closer to the display. How long has this expansion been ongoing? Human interstellar colonization began approximately 412 years ago. The process accelerated significantly after we developed reliable fusion drives and self-sustaining colony protocols. 400 years. Elder Counselor Zixathera repeated slowly. You've been spacefaring for 400 years and we never detected you. Not never, Chen corrected. Your people encountered evidence of our presence many times, but you classified it as natural phenomena, or dismissed it as sensor ghosts. Ambassador Grixtar spoke up from his corner. The ancient star charts my people found. How old are they? Approximately 230 years old. They date from our second major exploration wave, when we were still learning to mask our presence from potentially hostile species. Potentially hostile, Queen Speaker Vexhai repeated. You considered us a threat? Captain Chen's expression became more serious. Ambassador, we've observed your expansion patterns for over 50 years. The Confederation has a tendency to absorb smaller civilizations, either through economic pressure or military force. We wanted to understand your intentions before revealing ourselves. You've been studying us, the Voidwalker said. It wasn't a question. Extensively. We have observation posts in 17 systems around Confederation space. Our xenocultural specialists have been analyzing your societies, your decision-making processes, your response patterns to various stimuli. Elder Counselor Zixathera felt her crystal form flicker between colors as the implications hit her. Captain Chen, are you saying we've been test subjects? Research subjects, Chen corrected diplomatically. We needed to understand whether the Confederation represented a potential ally or a potential threat to human colonies in this region. And what was your conclusion? Captain Chen paused for a moment, choosing her words carefully. The Confederation shows both promise and concerning tendencies. Your species are capable of cooperation and peaceful coexistence, but you also show patterns of expansion that could eventually conflict with human territorial claims. Territorial claims? Zixathera's voice rose to a crystalline shriek. You're claiming territory in our space. Not your space, Elder Counselor. But there are several systems that the Confederation has marked for future expansion that already contain human colonies. The map zoomed in to show the disputed regions. Sure enough, systems that appeared on Confederation expansion charts were marked with green human colony indicators. Queen Speaker Vexhai's mandibles clicked rapidly. How is this possible? Our scouts reported those systems as uninhabited. Your scouts weren't looking for the right things, Chen explained. Human colonies are designed to have minimal environmental impact and to blend with natural phenomena. Unless you know what to look for, you'd classify them as unusual but natural formations. Stealth colonies, the Voidwalker whispered. You've been hiding entire civilizations from our sensors. Not hiding. Simply using different approaches to planetary development. We've found that low-profile colonies are more resilient and less likely to attract unwanted attention. Ambassador Grixtar raised one clawed hand. Captain Chen, how many humans are there? Total population, I mean. The question hung in the air like a challenge. Population numbers were considered sensitive information among Confederation species. They indicated economic strength, military potential, and territorial requirements. Captain Chen seemed to consider the question for a moment. Current human population across all colonies and installations is approximately 14 billion individuals. The number hit the Council like a physical blow. The entire Confederation contained maybe 8 billion sentient beings across all member species. The humans apparently outnumbered them by almost 2 to 1, and they were spread across thousands of systems. 14 billion, Elder Counselor Zixthera repeated weakly. That's just the civilian population, Chen added casually. Military personnel are counted separately. How many military personnel? Queen Speaker Vexhai asked, though she seemed afraid of the answer. That information is classified, I'm afraid, but I can tell you that Earth takes the defense of human space very seriously. The map zoomed out again, showing the full scope of human activities. What had looked like empty space to the Confederation was revealed to be a thriving civilization that dwarfed their own. Why reveal this now? The Voidwalker asked. You could have remained hidden indefinitely. 2 reasons, Chen replied. First, Confederation expansion has reached the point where contact was inevitable. Several of your survey fleets have come close to discovering our installations. It seemed better to control the circumstances of first contact, rather than risk an accidental encounter that might be misinterpreted as hostile. And the second reason? Captain Chen's expression became more serious. Recent Confederation military buildups in the neutral zone have been interpreted by some of our strategic planners as potentially aggressive moves toward human space. The colonial administration decided that establishing formal diplomatic relations would be preferable to allowing tensions to escalate. Elder, Counselor Zixthera felt a chill that had nothing to do with temperature. Your strategic planners were concerned about our military movements? Moderately concerned. The Confederation has been increasing patrol frequency and establishing forward bases in regions that border human territory. From our perspective, it looked like preparation for expansion into occupied space, but we didn't know it was occupied. We know that now, Chen said gently, which is why we're having this conversation instead of other options. Other options? Captain Chen didn't answer directly. Instead, she gestured to her display, and the map changed to show ship movements throughout the region. The Council representatives watched as dozens of markers moved through space, human vessels that had been invisible to Confederation sensors. This represents normal human traffic in this sector over the past month, Chen explained. Cargo ships, passenger transports, research vessels, routine patrols. The sort of civilian and low-level military activity you'd expect in established territory. The map showed more ship movements than the Confederation's entire merchant fleet. The humans weren't just hiding colonies. They were operating a complete interstellar civilization that the Council had never suspected existed. How did we miss all of this? Ambassador Grixtar asked, his scales shifting to a confused purple color. Different technological paradigms, Chen replied. Your sensors are designed to detect the energy signatures of Confederation technology. Our ships use fusion reactors, antimatter catalysts, and controlled gravity manipulation. Your computers classify those signatures as natural phenomena. Queen Speaker Vexahai leaned back in her chair. Captain Chen, I have to ask, if this conversation hadn't taken place, what would have happened when our expansion fleets reached your colonies? Captain Chen's smile faded completely. Queen Speaker, that's precisely the scenario we wanted to avoid. Unannounced military fleets approaching human colonies would have triggered automatic defense protocols. Automatic defense, Captain. Chen's image flickered back to life on the Council chamber's main display. Her expression was pleasant but serious. The look of someone about to deliver news that would change everything. Elder Counselor Zixthera, Before we proceed with formal diplomatic arrangements, I need to inform you of a recent development. The crystalline leader felt her form shift to a nervous orange. What kind of development, Captain? The Human Colonial Administration has been monitoring Confederation military movements for the past several weeks. The buildup of forces in the neutral zone, combined with recent defensive preparations around your core worlds, has been interpreted as potentially aggressive posturing. Queen Speaker Vexhi's compound eyes reflected her confusion. Aggressive posturing? We've been conducting routine military exercises. We understand that now, Chen replied diplomatically. But from our perspective, the movement of significant military assets toward our territorial boundaries required careful evaluation. The Voidwalker representative drifted closer to the display. You've been monitoring our military exercises? Continuously. Our strategic analysis teams track all significant military movements within 50 light-years of human space. It's standard security protocol. Elder Counselor Zixithera felt a growing sense of dread. Captain Chen, exactly how long have you been monitoring our activities? Active monitoring began approximately 57 years ago, when your expansion first approached regions containing human installations. Passive monitoring extends back much further. Passive monitoring? Long-range sensor networks, communication intercepts, economic analysis. The sort of information gathering any mature civilization conducts regarding potential neighbors. Ambassador Grixtar leaned forward in his seat. Captain, you speak of your colonial administration as if it were separate from your ship's crew. Is there a larger governmental structure we should be aware of? Captain Chen nodded. The New Horizon operates under the authority of the United Earth Expedition Force, which is itself a branch of the Human Colonial Administration. The Colonial Administration reports to the Earth Council, which coordinates policy for all human territories and installations. And the Earth Council's response to our recent military activities? Initially concern. Potentially hostile military buildups require appropriate countermeasures. However, given the success of our first contact protocols, the Earth Council has authorized me to extend an invitation for formal diplomatic relations. Elder Counselor Zixithera's relief was visible in the brightening of her crystal form. That's excellent news, Captain. I'm sure we can establish mutually beneficial relationships. I'm certain we can, Chen agreed. However, there is one additional matter to address. Given the potential for misunderstandings during this transitional period, Earth has decided to provide a diplomatic escort to ensure peaceful negotiations. The phrase diplomatic escort sent chills through the chamber. What sort of escort? Queen Speaker Vexhi asked carefully. A standard diplomatic protection detail. Nothing elaborate. How many ships? Captain Chen paused as if checking something off-screen. The escort consists of elements from the Third Fleet, currently en route from the Proxima Centauri Naval Station. They should be arriving within the next few minutes. Admiral Kethmore's voice suddenly crackled through the communication system, tight with tension. Council, I'm detecting massive hyperspace distortions throughout the system. Something big is about to arrive. Multiple somethings, Sub-Commander Jilthek added, her voice rising to a near panic. Hyperspace signatures are unlike anything in our databases. The energy readings are impossible. Captain Chen looked mildly apologetic. I should mention that human naval vessels use different hyperspace entry protocols than Confederation ships. The energy signatures tend to be quite distinctive. Elder Counselor Zixithera barely had time to ask what that meant before the first ship appeared. Materialized in space like a star, being born a massive eruption of controlled energy that resolved into a hull so large it dwarfed everything else in the system. The vessel was angular and aggressive, its dark hull studded with weapons arrays that made Admiral Kethmore's dreadnought look like a pleasure craft. Strange protrusions along its flanks pulsed with barely contained power. By the core, Admiral Kethmore whispered over the communication link, that thing is 12 kilometers long. Then the second ship appeared, and the third, and the fourth. Within minutes, the space around the Confederation capital world filled with human warships. They materialized with mathematical precision, taking positions that demonstrated perfect coordination and overwhelming tactical superiority. Some ships were sleek and fast-looking, others were massive and heavily armored. All of them radiated power that made the Confederation fleet look primitive by comparison. Council, Admiral Kethmore's voice was barely under control. I count 37 human vessels. My tactical computers can't even classify half of them. The energy readings. Some of these ships are more powerful than our entire defense grid. Through it all, Captain Chen maintained her pleasant expression. The escort has arrived. Commander Torres of the UES Retribution will be coordinating security for our diplomatic mission. The main display split to show a second human, this one wearing what was obviously a military uniform. Commander Torres appeared older than Captain Chen, with lines around her eyes that suggested someone who had seen combat. When she spoke, her voice carried an authority that made even the council representatives straighten in their seats. Elder Counselor Zixathera, I am Commander Maria Torres of the United Earth Navy. I want to assure you that our presence here is purely precautionary. We have no hostile intentions toward the Confederation. Precautionary? Elder Counselor Zixathera repeated weakly. Standard protocol when establishing first contact with potentially volatile political entities. The colonial administration prefers to avoid misunderstandings that might escalate into unfortunate incidents. Ambassador Grixtar found his voice. Commander Torres, your ships are impressive. May I ask how many vessels constitute a standard diplomatic escort? This is actually a reduced escort, Torres replied matter-of-factly. Normal diplomatic protection consists of a full squadron. However, given the peaceful nature of these negotiations, we brought only a single task force. A single task force, Queen Speaker Vexhai said faintly. 37 ships, 38 actually. The New Horizon counts as part of the escort even though she's civilian. The Voidwalker representative pulsed with what might have been awe or terror. Commander, what would a full squadron consist of? Standard naval squadron is 120 vessels plus support craft. For serious diplomatic missions, we might deploy an entire fleet. How many ships in a fleet? Depends on the class. A light diplomatic fleet would be around 300 ships. Heavy diplomatic fleets can exceed 1,000 vessels. The numbers hung in the air like a death sentence. The entire Confederation Navy consisted of maybe 200 ships total, and the humans casually deployed fleets 5 times that size for serious diplomatic missions. Admiral Kethmore's voice came through the speakers, hollow with shock. Council, my tactical officers have completed their analysis. Any one of these human ships could destroy our entire defense fleet. Together, they represent enough firepower to sterilize our entire star system. Commander Torres looked genuinely concerned. Admiral, I want to assure you that such extreme measures would never be necessary. Earth's rules of engagement strictly prohibit disproportionate responses. Disproportionate responses? Using more force than required to achieve tactical objectives. Destroying entire fleets when disabling them would suffice, for example. The casual way she discussed destroying fleets made several council members visibly flinch. Captain Chen intervened smoothly. Commander Torres, I think we may be overwhelming our hosts. Perhaps we should focus on the diplomatic aspects of our mission. Of course, Captain. Elder Counselor. The Third Fleet is here purely as observers. We won't interfere with your normal activities unless circumstances require our intervention. What circumstances? Elder Counselor Zixathera asked, though she dreaded the answer. Standard rules apply. Any hostile action toward human personnel or facilities, any attempt to interfere with human operations, any military buildup that threatens human security. Normal diplomatic protection protocols. Commander Torres made it sound routine, but the implications were staggering. The humans had just quietly informed the Confederation that any aggressive move would result in immediate retaliation from a force that could destroy their civilization. I think, Elder Counselor Zixathera said slowly, that we need to completely reconsider our approach to interstellar relations. Captain Chen smiled warmly. That sounds very wise, Elder Counselor. After all, the galaxy is large enough for all of us to coexist peacefully. Peacefully, Zixathera repeated, staring at the tactical display that showed 38 human warships surrounding her homeworld. The Earth Council is very committed to peaceful relations, Commander Torres added. We much prefer cooperation.